Why are you trying to incite violence?
Why are we on this side of the boundary?
Why are you inciting violence? You torture us and then you're standing here as if you own this shit? Get the fuck over there, man.
Inciting violence?
Get the other... Yeah, inciting violence and hatred. Why, you think you're gonna break our women's bones and smile over here and we're gonna smile back? Nah, motherfucker. You're in for war crimes. Now step back. Get behind the bloody boundary. Get back. Jab crash test dummy continuing his dialogue, being interrupted by some people, but that's alright. Everybody's here for the good things. So, what have you done about the cops who have committed human rights violations and brutalized us? Kicking and punching women, kneeling on their neck. What about the psychological and sound torture? What about the water torture? Flooding families? So what are you doing? What are you, captains or what? What's your rank? Promise you, this is Jab crash test dummy right here at the Imperial Steps of Jabsinda. That's the Robocop army. The war criminals are over here. I reckon Jabsinda is probably floating up in the ceiling like the Exorcist at this point.
Gov.nz, read over there. You're allowed to ask me if I have an exemption. I can say I have an exemption. You're not allowed to ask me why. You're not allowed to ask me for evidence of that. That's the law. Go read the New Zealand Bill of Rights and read the Human Rights Act. You're not allowed to ask me. Read the law. I'm trying to make you... Do you want to go to jail?
If you're saying 1,448 Kiwis are dead of all causes because of the jab, one or two. Okay. So why won't you tell your audiences about what MedSafe is saying? You're from One News. Why don't you report the news? So propaganda for war is a war crime under the Nuremberg Trial Code, which means you should be reporting war crimes instead of suppressing them. Now, since you suppress, you're a party to war crimes. You're being notified verbally right now, and when the time comes, you will be called to court.
And those two videos may be restricted under the Classifications Act, which that carries a penalty of imprisonment and a fine.
Now you're pissing on your grandfather's graves. How do you feel about that? A random internet video solicits a visit from Detective who again? Medsafe.gov.nz. I checked it this morning. 62,000 Kiwis injured of the Pfizer drug. Dead and injured children. Do I need to wheel the children out in wheelchairs? I know a few dead bodies. Do I need to bring them to the precinct? When is that investigation happening?
Talk to you later. Yeah.
Yeah? No murder investigation for Kiwi children? Yeah, thank you.
Marcin, it's really lovely to have you here today, but the subject is not a lovely one in this country. More and more Kiwis are worried about government overreach, and now, especially since Wellington and March the 2nd when we saw police tyranny, they're worried about police overreach. So tell us what has just happened to you here in New Zealand in June 2022.
Well, I woke up Saturday morning and a bunch of us were planning to be at around the city center to ask the dear leader some questions. She was in Christchurch in the South Island. Now we know the government unlawfully surveils us and so forth, and I don't know if this is linked to that or not, but this is more about the fact that they came to my premises unannounced. They knew exactly where to be. I was somewhere else the previous night. I'd stopped for 10 minutes only, and they knew where to come, when to come, and with an excuse to say, put allegations that information that they find online may be on a channel on Telegram might be harmful for children. That was the initial pretext of what they came with.
We'll cut to that piece now and have a look.
I've stated very clearly, I do not answer questions.
Okay. Look, there's some...
You did say something though.
Yes.
What were you saying and why are you here? State your purpose.
Okay.
I am living man Muhammad.
Yes.
I do not contract with the Crown or agents of the Crown. Notice to agent is notice to principal. You're corporate officers of the Crown. Now, why am I being intimidated, harassed, followed, and why are you at my premises? How do you know? What you know? Why do you know? Why are you here? Who, why, what, where?
Just trying to give you some advice, mate.
I do not answer questions. Advice.
Just listen to what we've got to
I'll
say.
talk to you.
Okay.
Okay. So there's a Telegram account called called Jab Crash Test Dummy. Okay, and it's got some 2 videos on there from April of this year, 2022, and those 2 videos show what looks to be conflict between Ukraine and Russia, and those 2 videos may be restricted under the Classifications Act, which that carries a penalty of imprisonment and a fine. So if that is your Telegram account and those are your videos that you've posted on there, my recommendation to you, and it's just some advice, that those 2 videos are removed, or the Telegram account is set up so those aged under the age of 18 cannot have access to those videos. Okay, so I've got a copy of that legislation here, which I can give you. I'll just leave it here. Have you got any questions for me, sir?
I have information. I'm privy to information which the rest of the world, and this is evidence in the public domain, categorically irrefutable evidence in the public domain, international law. The mayor of this city, Phil Goff, who you report to or work for, has led a pro-Ukraine march. Ukraine is on record from 2014 for being not just fascist and neo-Nazi, but a genocide that is ongoing. This country, the Crown, and you, arm and fund marching Nazis in Ukraine. That's just public knowledge. Now you're pissing on your grandfather's graves. How do you feel about that?
Okay. I think I've done here. We've just passed on that advice to you.
I've also given you some advice.
Thank you. Now,
Yeah, we'll take it on board, mate.
and
It's
you're
called
allowed
war
your
crimes.
opinions, and I'm
You're party to
I'm
war
not taking
crimes.
a
You're
side of Ukraine or Russia.
right
I'm
now
just
you're
saying
committing
the
propaganda for
particular-
war, which is war crimes.
Particular videos.
You're intimidating
restricted.
someone. You don't know who you're talking to. I'm living man Muhammad. I don't contract with the Crown. I don't know what your business here is. You can't contract with me. Second, now have you given the advice to the mayor, Phil Goff, about his criminal activity and funding genocide and supporting genocide? Will you do that this afternoon after this visit? So Phil Goff is not going to get a warning on mass murder and genocide that he's supporting, arming, funding this country is, but a random internet video solicits a visit from Detective who again?
Andy Smith.
Andy Smith, and
Rotten, Brad.
well done. New Zealand, this is where your tax dollars are going.
Okay, thanks, Mohammed.
But please take the advice on board, mate.
I suggest you take the advice on board as well, gentlemen. War crimes is a serious matter. Now, you've come to my premises. Do not ever come again. Do not intimidate New Zealand citizens again. Please go. One question, detectives.
Sure. Yeah.
Medsafe.gov.nz. I checked it this morning. 62,000 Kiwis injured of the Pfizer drug. Dead and injured children. Do I need to wheel the children out in wheelchairs? I know a few dead bodies. Do I need to bring them to the precinct? When is that investigation happening?
Okay, we'll talk to you later.
Yeah.
Yeah? No murder investigation for Kiwi children? Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so we saw there that they're claiming that that would be harmful to children. The obvious question is what sort of material had been posted on that Telegram channel in order for them to justify that? Was there something?
So I will answer that. I don't know, because what they are asserting is information in the public domain can be harmful to children. But let's look at the scenario. So this Telegram channel, Jab Crash Test Dummy, has, at the time, from what I understand, 700 or so subscribers. Not thousands, not tens of thousands. We're talking about a little wee channel somewhere. Now, Telegram, as far as I understand, I do understand technology, even adults have problem using Telegram. I thought the kids were on Snapchat and so forth. So this whole thing is a flimsy excuse. It wasn't even a charge or anything, it was advice.
As you can see, we've had our eye on you for some time now, Mr. Anderson.
So the Agent Smith from the Matrix came to give advice on what speech should be okay and not okay. That's what happened.
It was very threatening as I saw it. It was very intimidatory, what I picked up from that clip we've just seen. It is absolutely counter to our right to free speech in this country, to have these strange officers coming and giving you, as you say, advice on how you can speak in New Zealand.
Yes, and see, the thing is, it's not a traffic cop trying to drag you to court for some bullshit fine. It's two plainclothes detectives. The message they're sending is that if you're a New Zealander and if you speak and they don't like your speak, there will be a file open on you. Another thing we know about this country is they have been openly advertising for social surveillance people as well. Now, this totalitarian model that they're working with is working on the fact that people snitch, people tell on each other, files get opened if you don't say the right thing. That's what's happening.
It's horrendous. What did you think of New Zealand, Austin, when you came here in 2013? Was this the country you ever expected to live in?
I came from Dubai. I love New Zealand. I love people. Yeah, so let's put that aside. That's always something that always, people will jump into the comments. Let's put that aside and let's be a smarter apes over here. So the marketing was really nice and glossy, clean, green, yada, yada. Once I come, I realized 2/3 of the monitored waterways are polluted. The year I land, we start the surveillance thing. Then we start TPPA. So it's been a little bit of a shock, but...
TPPA, the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement, that's a huge issue that's been subsumed by COVID.
Yes.
But you mentioned that earlier, that you realized years ago that surveillance was being carried out. I wanted you to elaborate on that. What did you realize and why?
Well, I got involved with the surveillance bill, the TPPA, Weapons Expo, and I was, this is something I would like people to know how much potential they have just by actually be truthful about what they're trying to do. I was running a publishing platform, which was part of this Vineyard Sacker in the US. It's a geopolitical platform. My dialogues and correspondence were with the likes of Andrei Vilcek, who wrote books with Chomsky, to Pepe Escobar, to people of that caliber, and just an interest in geopolitics and so forth. And this merited harassment from the authorities here, to phone calls to my home, and this is way back, 6-7 years ago.
Phone calls to your home?
Yes.
What form did they take?
So if a friend from an island comes and visits, who's involved in the Weapons Expo protest in terms of just showing up with a play card, but doesn't carry a phone, they would call my home the next day and ask, where's that friend? Just to send a signal, we're watching, we know who you were hanging out with or not. And that's been happening for a while. So stuff like that, yeah.
So Mohsen, some Kiwis watching this would say, well, that's good. They're keeping an eye so we don't have another 9/11 or, terrorists coming in. What do you say to those Kiwis who are willing to hand their security over to this sort of behavior?
I'm Mohammed. I'm an obvious Muslim. I have a beard. I'm from Pakistan. I was born and raised in Saudi Arabia. I do have a little bit of a lived experience and I hate the word expert, but I have a lived experience on the subject. So what they have been trying to put me in that box throughout Parliament and even before that. And the interesting thing is, because these law enforcement monkeys, the way they work, they're so stupid. The day they visited on Saturday, the same night, I had a contact off the internet, bearded dude on a video telling me that he's been working with NZSIS and so forth. He knows how to train people and so forth. They've been doing this kind of shit to me for a while because it's easy to pin a Muhammad on, radical, terrorist, yada, yada. So the government has been working on that for a while. I don't fit in that box. Now, recently, I'm actually pretty happy. You know why? Because I got doxxed on Facebook by the left, in New Zealand, and they described me as a neo-Nazi and a QAnon shaman, the commentators. Now, also, just a day ago, I came to understand after that video was posted online, a lot of the far right over here in New Zealand, they're calling me a neoliberal lefty. So both these extremes hate me, which is good because it tells me that I think I'm in the middle somewhere.
Isn't it extraordinary that this country has lost the ability to have civilized discussion, to treat each other with an engagement, with a respect, with manakitanga, with a curiosity about each other's worldviews. Instead, we have these labels and boxing people and suspicion and insulting. It is so disgusting. We used to be a far more civilized nation. I know this government has led us much further down this path of insulting and being cruel to one another. How do we bring it back in your view? Because this is not how I want New Zealand to go, and I'm sure you don't want it.
Absolutely not. And how shall I think we need to articulate the problem really well. So a lot of people might identify with this because we all work or come from a business world and so forth. And I come from an information risk management world, a programming world, business world. And we always have to articulate the problem. And I don't think we're doing a good enough job in articulating the problem. Now, we know that there's a lot of problem in society. We understand that this jab program has caused a lot of deaths and injury and so forth. Now, we're articulating the problem. The piece of the puzzles that we often are not very direct with, and I don't have any qualms about being direct, is putting faces and names to it. So, you see, when we were in Parliament for 23 days, and today I understood that they are releasing pictures of people from Parliament as people that they want to interrogate for the crime scene.
No.
Yes.
This is from the Freedom Village.
Yes.
This is mums and dads who've been mandated out of jobs, jab injured, who were scared about the future of this country, who'd gone to speak to their politicians. They're intimidating those people now.
So let me break it down for you in the sense that what they will do is they will take the end moments on 2nd March of somebody hurling a stone or so, or not, and say, well, and they will paint a criminal brush over the whole thing. But here's the thing, I was there from all 23 days. First day on site, the 2 deputy commissioners, as far as I understand, Wellington and Wanganui, to senior sergeants on site, I told them very clearly what my full name is, where I'm from, that they are war criminals, they've been put on notice, they have to understand that. Now, so what crime scene are they talking about? Now, if you understand logically, now that few square yards over there in front of the Parliament, they had more eyeballs and surveillance on people than the whole country. It's their backyard. Now, we're talking about infrared, we're talking about acoustic weaponry, we're talking about surveillance, human intel. They had this game knocked down from day one. They had 23 days to psychologically interrogate and study people, night raids, to beating women, breaking bones, and then they would come 4 hours later in the morning and say, kia ora. This is called psychological warfare. So Andrew Koster was in charge of this domestic warfare on Kiwis.
Andrew Koster.
He's responsible for domestic terrorism right now. We're talking about illegal detentions, we're talking about torture, we're talking about breaking bones, we're talking about putting people in that situation. And then, because see, his primary responsibility is to protect the brutality of his force and the 120, because there's 3 gangs. Parliament. The problem is, the reason they came on Saturday is not the video, it's none of that. The reason is articulation. They don't want anyone to resonate on that level. Because it's very simple. There's 3 gangs. There's the Crown Gang, there's the Police Gang, and there's the Parliament Gang. Andrew Koster's in charge of this. His job is to protect his force and to protect those 2 other gangs. So their offensive is going to be start labeling people from the camp and they committed criminal activity. This is how this game runs. It's
What's
projection.
the Crown? What's the Crown Gang? Elaborate on that.
That's interesting, because if you ask them to define the Crown, they can't. The Crown is like a Yakuza. It's an organized mafia. No one knows what it is, but it rules over you, and it's benevolent, and it delivers justice. That's the trick.
Explain that.
It's a psychological construct. The crown emerges from the notion that the font of honor, the sovereign, is the one who bestows all of that. And they deliver the justice. Well, who's the crown? Who gave them the authority over living beings? Irrerum natura beings. God gave me a mouth to speak and breathe. How the audacity of the Ministry of Health. Go to the Ministry of Health's page. They have a page called Orders. Last I checked, God gave Moses orders. Yeah? So how is the Ministry of Health giving beings, living beings, orders to muzzle up? And how is it that the population, including the doctors and the people, the ones who are pro, it's not about pro or anti, it's just simple basic questions. Would you agree we need oxygen for our brain and vital organs?
Absolutely.
Would you agree that depleted amounts of oxygen in your brain and vital organs over a prolonged period of time will lead to neurological issues? You don't even have to think that far or be a scientist or look up studies. You put less oxygen through a biological mechanical suit at the biological quantum computer up here, which is what they're trying to disable. They're trying to disable a biological quantum computer. You muzzle it up and you jab up. And this brain then becomes a primordial brain soup swirling in your cranium. That's why they're batshit crazy. They're clinically insane at this point.
So you're saying that you can't have faculties of critical thinking supported by lack of oxygen, which comes from breathing in carbon dioxide, when we wear masks all day.
Yeah, but
I have had a doctor say, I'm deeply concerned about the number of Kiwis wearing masks day in, day out for their lowered oxygen levels that will weaken the lungs. They will fill up with carbon dioxide, which is a waste material. It is not good for our health to have this for 2+ years when the rest of the world is not masking. Why do you think this is happening? You said first define the problem. What is the problem as you see it to define, to be defined?
So what we are doing here, the way I see your interviews, the way I see Steve Oliver, Brad Flutie, Calvin Alp, all the names that we know, Carlene, this, that, all of the names in the freedom movement, what we all are doing is we are doing a clinical psychological intervention. You have to look at the state and the operators of the state and the psyche they carry. Now, we know that Jacinda Ardern is a young global leader, right, of the World Economic Forum. We all know that Klaus Schwab is part of the World Economic Forum. Okay, yeah, go ahead. Yep. Now,
I was just going to say, this is all verifiable. These are not conspiracies. You can go online and verify that she was part of Klaus Schwab's class along with Trudeau and Macron.
And these are, you look at the World Economic Forum and what they're saying, these are mentors. I come from a world where I've interacted with these Booz Allen types, these McKinsey types, this consulting world, and how they push down their ideology. Now, Klaus Schwab is one member. The head of technology is Ghislaine Maxwell's sister.
She was the partner of Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah,
the pedophile.
Yeah, her sister is also, but is part of the WEF's technology head. The third person is Yuval Hariri. Now, Yuval Hariri is the actual author or the actual guru of the Great Reset. Now, Yuval Hariri. Now, these three people. This is just I've named three. Now, this is the World Economic Forum. Little Jacinda Ardern is sitting over there, getting her little indoctrination. So these are the people. Now, Yuval Hariri. He's on record. What does he say? He says we are useless. We have no purpose. We have no souls, and something must be done with us. And when he was asked, when he was going off, he's like drugs and games, and that's already happening.
What we're talking about now is like a second industrial revolution, but the product this time will not be textiles or machines or vehicles or even weapons. The product this time will be humans themselves. We are basically learning to produce bodies and minds. Bodies and minds are going to be, I think, the two main products of the next wave of all these changes. And if there is a gap between those that know to produce bodies and minds and those that do not, then this is far greater than anything we saw before in history. And this time, if you're not part of the revolution fast enough, then you probably become extinct. Once you know how to produce bodies and brains and minds, so cheap labor in Africa or South Asia or wherever, it simply counts for nothing. again, I think that the biggest question in maybe in economics and politics of the coming decades will be what to do with all these useless people. I don't think we have an economic model for that. My best guess, which is just a guess, is that food will not be a problem. With that kind of technology, you will be able to produce food to feed everybody. The problem is more boredom and what to do with them, and how will they find some sense of meaning in life when they are basically meaningless, worthless. My best guess at present is a combination of drugs and computer games.
My best guess at present is a combination of drugs and computer games.
It is one of the most chilling pieces on the internet, seeing that man who's the author of the book Sapiens, which is about the history of humankind. He has zero humanity. He has zero empathy.
So the point I'm trying to make over here, you're absolutely right. These are misanthropes who hate humanity. Now, I come from a technology world. I can tell you about just the electricity market for the people listening, just to understand. In the utility market, connections, disconnections, 2/3 of that market can be done by 250 Sparkies with 10 people in the back office and software and some AI bots. They don't need that many bodies. Now, the ideology that this Red Witch carries, it's that ideology. It's a misanthropic ideology. You're not needed. They can't empathize with you. They can't live with you. They don't even shop where you shop. They don't eat where you eat. They are misanthropes. They hate humanity. So you have to understand the psychotic mind that these edicts and these orders come from. Because good human beings, we are at loss always. Why are they doing this? Why not do that? Well, they're psychotic. And this is a psychological intervention. We need to put straitjackets out.
So you're defining the issue, but there will be people out there saying, no government would do that. Jacinda Ardern loves us. Look how she cared for the Muslims when Christchurch happened. Look how compassionate she was. What do you say when you hear people talk like that?
Well, as a Muslim, you see, it's all optics. You know, she wore the scarf, she played the azan in the parliament, which I don't agree with. You don't do that to a country. You don't play the azan as a Muslim. Because, see, 70% of this country is white, European. And there's a Christian heritage. Why would you play the azan in the parliament and paint a target around every Muslim's back? What for? To create unity? That's not unity. That's not respect to anybody, right?
Why do you say that puts a target on every Muslim's back?
Because people will still go on the fact, why is one religion or race being preferred? Why isn't there a Lord's Prayer? Well, if you play the Muslim prayer, then this Muslim is saying that we should put a Hindu prayer, we should put the Lord's Prayer there, we should have a rabbi over there, and we should do it then do all of them. Yeah? Okay. Now, the other thing is, the interesting thing to observe, the mosque shooter whose name we apparently can't utter, because we were treated like children. Yeah, so Brendan Tarrant, the guy who shot up the mosque, we can't talk about him. And we can't consume evidence in the public domain, but it's called a trial. It's called the kangaroo court. It's a banana republic. There was never any trial. Okay, now, the other thing, she goes to Harvard. And as a Pakistani, I'm especially really it's just hilarious. It's pathetic what she did. She goes to Harvard and she says, she talks about Benazir Bhutto. I'm from Pakistan, I'm from Karachi, from Sindh, from her province. I'm not even from her party, or was ever from her party. But that's not the point. Benazir Bhutto, she's not even a stain on her shoe. And she goes on to Harvard and says, oh, well, Benazir was pregnant in office and delivered a baby, and I'm the second woman to do that. How pathetic.
I met Benazir Bhutto in Geneva in June of 2007. We both attended a conference that drew together progressive parties from around the world. 7 months later, she was assassinated. Now, there will be opinions and differing perspectives written about all of us as political leaders. Two things that history will not contest about Benazir Bhutto. She was the first Muslim female prime minister elected in an Islamic country when women in power was a rare thing. She was also the first to give birth in office. The second and only other leader to have given birth in office almost 30 years later was me.
So this is the caliber. These are intellectual midgets we're dealing with.
Which you are not. You are a thinker and you are a questioner and you are somebody also of inordinate courage. I met you first the day I went to the rollout of the 5 to 11-year-olds. And when there was a thug, what I can only call a thuggish man, protecting the very cowardly reporter, when my question to that reporter was, why are you moving in the opposite direction from a potentially breaking news story? And all she could do was rush up the road, and this thug was trying to block us. You really stuck by me, and I didn't even know who you were then. But what I recognized was a brave human being, an ethical human being, and now talking to you, a highly intelligent human being.
How many kids are back?
Have you heard that 5 kids have been, because I used to work at One News, have you heard 5 kids have collapsed this morning? Have you heard that? And are you going to report it on One News? Is that part of what you think ethically you need to do? So I used to sit opposite Simon Dallow on the One News desk. Yeah, and I just can't believe you guys are not reporting the full story. Why would you be hiding something like 5 kids collapsing?
I'm sure the DHB will put it. I'm sure the DHB will put a release out if that's been the case.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
are you investigating as reporters? Because that's the role of a reporter, to investigate. Wouldn't you be going back in there and investigating rather than skiving off?
What are you doing?
What would be the right thing, do you think, to do? Have you got any answer at all? Isn't it a lovely reversal?
1 minute.
That you always want
to ask the
answers.
questions.
You're just there. It's not your responsibility. Like they
What are
said
you
in
doing?
Germany.
What are you doing?
Wow.
Throwing that.
That little minder is very violent with his little Vodafone swagger.
Why does
Being
Vodafone support a
responsible
thug?
as journalists, you should be ashamed of yourself. Ashamed.
What's the name of this thug? This Vodafone thug.
If you had not been there, that bully minder would have absolutely
He was trying to block your
muscle me
shot.
up.
He was trying to block your shot.
Absolutely, and that is shameful in a democracy. I have a right to ask questions.
Yeah.
They have a responsibility to answer a fair question, which is, if there is word that 5 people have collapsed, why are you not going back and investigating? That was all I was asking, which is what basic journalism is. And you kept that bully away from pushing me. Thank you.
You're welcome. But you know, they reported in the media that the police arrived. We called the police to serve them an international warrant, and they ran away. And now that you asked the media that they're journalists, they're supposed to ask questions.
Absolutely.
And you have 5 reported casualties.
Yes, collapses. of
Collapse.
children.
5 children have collapsed.
Yes.
You're asking the media to report that. That's their job. That's what I think a journalist does.
That's what they're meant to do. And that fatuous cameraman said, oh, I'm sure if it's true, we'll find it from the Ministry of Health.
Well, if that's the
But a
case...
journalist is not meant to get press releases from the Ministry of Health, who are guided by a politician. A journalist is meant to question and find the stories that politicians are hiding.
Absolutely.
And so this could easily be hidden by the government, via the Ministry of Health. And that slack cameraman was going, oh, well, as long as we get the official release, we'll just go with that. And the reporter was so cowardly, she wouldn't even answer me. What a gutless reporter. I am so ashamed that TV1 standards have sunk into the gutter to that extent. That really hurts. They are not honouring the people of New Zealand. They are not caring about us. They are not doing a good job. They are just taking money like whores, and absolutely with no standards. I'm furious.
Would you say, if the cameraman and the journalist lady you spoke to, if their stance is that they're supposed to carry messages from here to there, and when they get messages from officialdom to blurt it out, then wouldn't they be stenographers and not journalists?
Absolutely.
Because
stenographers.
I can do
They're
that job.
PR people. They're propagandists.
You give me a script, I'll read out the questions and get paid and be on TV. Is that journalism?
It is not.
It's not
I think
journalism.
The music's killing us. Thank you for what you did. Oh my God, thank you for what you did. If we don't have these rights to have you, people like you, stand up and question and say, I'm not happy with the answers, until I'm happy with the answers, I'll continue to stand up and be brave, we have lost our democracy. So all Kiwis, I would argue, need to get behind you and support what you are doing. Whether I agree with everything you say or not, I totally defend your right to do this, to ask questions and to say it. But where do we go now? We've defined your version of the problem, a group of psychopaths, in effect, in charge in the world. Where do we go with that?
Well, there's, okay, let's go back to Parliament for a second. They did all of that. For 23 days, they still, at the peak of it, they were serving 6,000 meals a day. So imagine this, they're beating people, they're torturing people, kicking us, they're playing the sound torture thing till 11 p.m. When the cyclone's coming, they flood the grounds with women and children there, and then they say they're filthy and all of that.
And anyone who doubts the torture, we did an interview with Stephen G, and we'll put that under this interview, in which he talks about the absolute psychological mess and the post-traumatic stress he now has because of what he regarded as a form of torture.
And despite all of that, people were happy. They still went on with their day. They still fed everybody. They still did everything. Children had their games, everything from mental health checks to massages for people, everything.
Beautiful art.
And people did that.
Sport for the kids, everybody hugging. It was the most loving environment.
So the message here is we are much more powerful than what we realize. I know of just one friend of mine who has no platform, who last year shut down the whole of Auckland CBD on a car protest. And the cops had to call and ask for the protest to be shut down because they couldn't get out of Victoria parking lot. And that's just one human doing that. And we can do a lot more. But we also have to change our vocabulary. Petitions and requests are for slaves. I bet you, if you ask your MP that you want to write a little complaint letter, they will send you the stationery for it. I think it's about time we start demanding resignations and demanding lawful, natural law, Nuremberg-based trials. There's only about 200 of them. That's it.
200 of them around the world?
No. I'm talking about New Zealand. 120 parliamentarians, the Governor General and the Ombudsman. And then you have the police chiefs. These are the people who are in charge of the operation, the police being the most morally culpable party, because we have too many dead bodies. That's the only reason. See, when you have too many dead bodies of children and, we're talking about thousands and now we're talking about tens of thousands injured. And that's just by their estimates, huh? So when we
Wait a minute, this is going too fast for a lot of people who are watching. You're claiming that there are thousands of children or thousands of Kiwis?
I'm saying medsave.gov.nz says that over 62,000 Kiwis are injured.
Yes.
Now that's a very...
shocking.
I can go into depth of the nature of injuries. Facial paralysis is not just an injury. It's pretty horrific. Yeah. So injury is still a euphemism, but we have to, for expediency, use that word. 62,000 Kiwis are damaged, and thousands are dead. So now we demand resignations and we demand trials.
And for people who doubt that, you just have to ask one question. Why has this Prime Minister never acknowledged all those jab-injured, officially registered MedSafe jab-injured Kiwis in any of her press conferences? Why is she keeping that quiet?
The two most important things we could be doing right now is mask use and, of course, vaccinations.
We know that what makes a difference is mask use and vaccinations. We know the biggest thing that we can do to make a difference right now is mask use and vaccines, and so that's what we're asking New Zealanders to do. Nobody will be safe if not everybody is vaccinated.
That shows that she's hiding something. That's not giving information so Kiwis can be informed in giving their consent to a jab.
Absolutely. And if you want her to not be quiet, Kiwis have to get up and stand outside these administrative buildings and peacefully and lawfully, in all love, demand things. And once they see people standing and asking, things might change a bit faster and quicker. That's the only thing they're banking on. They're banking on the fact that you're going to sit on your couch, you're going to forward messages and like posts and have a beer. But the second you decide to get up on a Sunday morning and go down to the administrative building of the local council or the mayor and actually demand things, yeah, I think because this is not El Salvador. This isn't a war zone. They can't take a gunship and gun us all down. They can't torture us all down. They can't even lock us all up down. We can call this bluff. They're standing on nothing. And we have tons and tons of evidence. I have so much evidence I can't even fill up my garage. And that's just this guy here. So we have enough evidence. And we have dead bodies and children in wheelchairs. So what gives? So
and you're saying 200 of them in New Zealand. Around the world, how many?
Roughly, I mean, I'm just giving you the administrative.
But it gives
these people are little paper pushers and minions of the overlords over there. But yeah, well, that I don't know. I mean, like every country has a different demographic based on the elite of the country and the pushback they get from the population of the country and how that mixture works and population demographics. But here, yeah.
But I'm talking about these leaders who are in lockstep. That should also be a real red flag for Kiwis. The fact that Trudeau might say something in Canada, and then this fellow leader in New Zealand, Ardern, uses almost the same language.
That's primarily is the Five Eyes, which we know about. The US, UK, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. Currently the 5 biolabs, national level, where they're experimenting all kinds of things now in terms of sociology, human engineering, and so forth. Because this is all social behavior and modification, really. They're changing the dynamic of how we live. So these five eyes and no brain, that's what I call them. So they are the chief drivers of this paradigm right now in terms of the pandemic and the war in Ukraine and the visit of the New Zealand police detectives to this living being's house was based on Ukraine, on a video about Ukraine. Now, they fund and arm Ukraine, and Ukraine is responsible right now for an ongoing genocide. And the mayor over here supports that. So we have mayors who are supporting that kind of activity in foreign war zones, a state which is sending arms and finances to them, but they're concerned about children consuming possibly harmful content on a small little app that adults don't even know how to use with 700 subscribers. So you see, it's got nothing to do with that, because they are, if they want to talk about Ukraine, that's international war crimes. They are so criminal. They can't even utter a word in their defense without incriminating themselves. So we're at that stage.
So Mohsen, for people who are now feeling overwhelmed by the amount of information, gently take themselves. It's a good thing to do, isn't it? Kiwis, take ourselves online and look up different perspectives on these issues that we are being fed in mainstream media. As someone who used to work in mainstream, I'd say turn off all mainstream news reports and begin to do your research online. We can't go down every avenue here. I want to go down the avenue of you personally. What was that like, that visit to you? How did that affect you as a brave warrior looking to stand your ground on issues that matter to you? That's what you were doing in a free society. And you have these two very unnerving, smooth talking, but basically threatening human beings coming up your driveway who've clearly been spying on you. What was the effect on you?
It did shake me a bit. Was not some. I did at some point expect something like that, but just it validated a lot of things for me on because see. They door knock when you become more of a threat, or they want to for their ideology, what they're pushing right now.
People say when you're over target, when you're telling more truth than they want out in the marketplace, they'll try to threaten. I've had a number of times where Ardern's put her media onto me, and I know that it's because we're telling truths or asking questions.
I would not like to. I guess I've had it for a bit, so there wasn't any fear as such. But yes, it is the afterthought after the visit. Yeah, because now I don't know. Now I don't know if I'm not at home now. Could they come and knock? Could they threaten people at home? How do I guarantee safety on that? How? So they've introduced this thing into my paradigm, and they've walked away, and they call themselves lawmen. So they've come to a civilian's home, unlawfully, illegally surveilled them, tailed them, threatened them, intimidated them, based on baseless, groundless allegations, and they walked off. And I have to now factor their criminality into my daily life. So that's how it has affected me. So I know they're criminals, but now they've kind of made themselves bona fide, certified criminals for this guy here. So now when I'm going to the dairy, or when I'm going out, or going here, or turning the car this way or that way, I don't know who's watching, who's following. If I go here, is that a window for them to come and break in, threaten somebody else, interrogate somebody else? Is that their way of going to somebody else and saying, hey, you hang out with this guy and this is what we are after? Are you related to this video? We've seen you hang out with this guy. So that's what they're doing. And that's what, if I did have a concern, my concern would be that now they would start targeting other people I know. Because that's how they're working. They're targeting us now.
There's so much in that answer. First of all, I want to commend you. Only a very strong man has the strength to be as vulnerable as you just were. Every single one of us can relate to your sense of, not fear, as you said, but concern. It would be unnatural not to have that, because that very visit feels to me as if it was designed to make you feel a bit shaken around psychologically.
I did not move my car out of the driveway for half an hour. I was sat there, but I was just processing. That's the truth.
Can I just say here to
they got half an hour. Yeah, that's all right.
I want to say to the police down this camera, if you are Kiwi born and bred, and your grandfathers or great-grandfathers fought for freedom so that we could live in a free country, you should be ashamed, those two men, ashamed of what you did. And any policeman who supports a government that supports this should be absolutely ashamed of what you are doing. You're selling out your fellow Kiwis. This man has a right to his opinions. He has a right to be brave and question. He has a right to come here on behalf of all of us and seek information and share it so that we can all question in a democracy. Mohsin, I want you to look down that camera and send a message to Jacinda Ardern. What would you say to this Prime Minister who is creating this kind of horror in New Zealand?
Resign and get ready for trial.
And to the police, give your message. What if this happened to them or their children or their families? What would you say to those two policemen if you really could sit with them over a coffee, really, as human to human, and say what that felt like and ask them why they are agreeing to a pay packet that allows them to behave this way?
Heed your calling. Yeah, I think it's time for them to go and arrest some of the higher-ups. Did I get your question right?
You're a brave man, Mohsin. Do you feel you can go on standing for what you believe in light of what's going on? You said that night there were helicopters overhead, is that right?
Yes.
How did that feel?
It reminded us of Wellington because they were doing that over there. And some of my friends still have problems at night because they're surveilling a lot of us from Wellington. So they still do that to other people who haven't had door knocks yet, or might have had and they haven't said, or have been quiet because of it. I don't know. I don't know how many people they're doing this to. And some of them, they wake up at night and they with dreams and they have issues with this chopper sound and stuff like that. Yeah.
My God.
Or when they see a cop car. So I've been, sometimes you're out driving with friends, or they're driving and they see a cop car, or they're in the passenger seat, they just immediately like, because this is the nature of the relationship of people now with the police right now.
I've had so many girlfriends, middle-class Kiwis, say, "Ooh, I don't like seeing the police now. I shudder. I wonder if they were down there in Wellington. I wonder what they did." People are looking twice at police and not feeling the trust that we once had. Much has been ruined.
Yeah, I mean, I want to do, yes, absolutely. And the sad part is, and they have to understand that, because they're from, you see, they're not a separate entity. I don't believe in duality. I believe in non-duality. They are me, I am them. Our brothers and sisters are in the police. They live in our neighborhoods. They shop at Countdown, New World, whatever you want to call it, right? So they just have to find that braveness, or the courage, the ethos, pathos, logos, everything has to come together, and they have to do the right thing, and they have to think bigger than themselves, and they have to do that, because we can't completely. But what I can say is, having said that, they do have to take off that uniform before they get any respect from this population. I don't believe they deserve any respect while they have that uniform. Yeah.
Yeah, I've lost a huge amount of respect for our police. Yeah. So I asked you before, can you keep going? And the second part of that is, what does keep you going?
I really love people, and I enjoy people. I love helping people. I love working with people, and that's kind of that's a part of it, a huge part of it, I suppose. Though the motivation also really comes from the fact that friends and family who are injured or not here is just this feeling of when you're blood, and I consider New Zealanders like my kin, because I don't have a philosophy of duality. So you're my family and so forth. It really is like that for me. So I have a feeling that when your blood, your family gets duped and taken for a ride and left for dead like a dog, that is like this righteous indignation, this fire, that's not going to go out until they're held accountable, because they don't get to cull us, they don't get to dupe our family, trick them, and leave them for dead or injured. They don't get to do that. And if you vote into the system, you validate this system. And you basically say that a group of elites can come into power and they can make decisions and literally kill and injure thousands, and it's okay. So they're saying that some animals are more equal than other animals. So this red witch communism that we have over here, this totalitarian system, no go. Yeah.
That's a strong, you use the term cull, to cull us. C-U-L-L.
Yeah.
Is that what you think is happening?
Yes. And may I add one word? Because what I'm talking about is democide. A priori knowledge, which they have on this vaccine.
A priori.
A priori knowledge on this vaccine. And I'm using the word democide. And I'm not saying, when I say Phil Goff is responsible for death and injury in Auckland due to COVID policy. So I want the mental health suicides, the diabetes, the cancer patients, the liver patients, all of them who haven't been receiving help and have been silently dying off or getting worse. They all are under COVID policy, under Phil Goff, and the domestic security under Andrew Koster, and then we go for the rest. This is how it's working.
There's no denying that. A doctor told me of somebody who died further down the island in the weekend. He was on chemotherapy. He got what he called a cold, and because they diagnosed it as COVID, they refused the chemotherapy. He begged them. He said, I just have a cold. He wasn't given the chemo, and he died over the weekend.
Yeah. And the whole idea is to have a myriad ways of getting rid of, in WEF speak, the useless people. That's the ideology, remember?
Again, I think that the biggest question in maybe in economics and politics of the coming decades will be what to do with all these useless people.
Will be what to do with all these useless people.
Yuval Harari's ideology is what determines how she is playing here at the Red Witch. So this is how it's going. They consider you useless, you don't have a soul, too many of you, they can't just come and shoot you, they'll give you something toxic, you are predisposed to this or that, you will taper off. They don't even count you dead 21 days after. So from a data scientist's perspective, and I come from that industry of information risk management and forensic process analysis, the data MedSafe provides has no data transparency, integrity, security, or data provenance. It's nothing. It's lies. And even in a pack of lies, which are 1 to 5% reporting by state bodies, when they say 62,000, that means 1 to 5% reporting on average globally. So they're lying, and even then the figures are horrible, because you project 62,000 from 5% to up. We're talking about hundreds of thousands injured right now.
How does this end, Mohsin? How do you think this ends? What are the options for Kiwis? Because this will be melting down some Kiwis' brains, going, where do I begin with all this information overload? But how do you see this ending for this country?
Everyone has to respect themselves and find value in themselves. Stop looking for leaders. Start connecting with your neighborhood, your friends. Show up at the jab clinic. Take out your phone. Be the American. I love America for their creativity. Okay?
What do you mean, take out your phone?
Be like Americans. You see a cop, go ask questions. You see a vaccine clinic, go ask questions. You see somebody discriminating at the door, whip out your camera and ask questions. Put them on the spot. They're standing on nothing.
Yeah, go ahead. What are you saying? Tell me. Now go to covid19.gov.nz, read over there. You're allowed to ask me if I have an exemption. I can say I have an exemption. You're not allowed to ask me why. You're not allowed to ask me for evidence of that.
So, what have you done about the cops who have committed human rights violations and brutalized us? Kicking and punching women, kneeling on their neck. What about the psychological and sound torture? What about the water torture, flooding families? So what are you doing?
Ask them, why do you have to wear a mask when you can't breathe? Ask them, ask all of them, ask the doctors, ask the journalists, ask the academics. Knock on the, you read an article, where is that academic who wants to jab babies? Because in the US, they started jabbing babies now.
Guys, I'm begging you not to vaccinate your kids. It's been 2 years, they're not sick, they're doing good. Please just do some research. Please just do some research. It's been 2 years, you haven't left anyone else alone. Please, these are precious babies. They don't have the right, they don't have a choice. They don't know any better, sweetheart, please. All I'm asking you is just to do the research. It takes 5 minutes. I'm asking you just to do the research, please. It takes 5 minutes to do the research, sweetheart. Once it's done, it can't be reversed. I'm begging you, please do the research. I will pay you to do the research.
And the Red Witch is going to start jabbing babies. This is as satanic and ritualistic as it can get. We went from one jab, adults, to sudden adults dying of sudden syndromes apparently, toddlers dying, and now we're going for babies. So whip out your cameras, be a citizen journalist, put them on the spot, start asking questions, and start banding together. You know, you want to go, your local supermarket discriminates, get your friends and family together, and 20 of you, 10 of you, go to the market. How many are they going to throw out? The cops can't even show up in time. Make a statement and keep doing it. You need to get up, you need to start exercising, and we need to start congregating around mayoral buildings and council departments and all of them. We don't need all to be in Wellington. They're cutting the fuel and energy. All of this is part of that. Energy crisis, food crisis, water crisis is warfare. Psychological warfare, biological warfare, economic warfare, and they're trying to cut down the routes to resistance or rebellion. Because this nation is in a state of rebellion right now. They don't know it. The softies don't want the party cadres up top, don't want to hear the people down at the bottom talking about it, but this country is rebelling. Now, what you do is...
I'm going to slow you down there because I can't find one person who likes Jacinda Ardern.
How does it feel to be more popular abroad than it is at home?
Again, as I say, my total focus is at home. That's what matters to me.
Again, as I say, my total focus is at home. That's what matters to me.
I cannot, and yet I've known people who've stuck up for her. But there's a massive sea change since March the 2nd, when she sent her police in. A massive sea change. Everybody, even those who've gone on with the jabs and the boosters, are saying, I don't want her as the Prime Minister anymore. So I agree with that.
Absolutely. So we just do it local level. So stop thinking about just Wellington, your own town center, your own little city, wherever you might be. What can you do there? What can you do down the road? What can you do at the local medical clinic, at the local countdown, at the local police station? What can you demand? What can you do? What can you do to ask them? Whip out your camera, start making noise. If you're going to sit at home, then they continue to do this.
It's a very powerful call to action. And if we want to save this country, I can't argue with that, because it's clear when one does some research that there is tyranny afoot. There's a reduction in personal liberty. There's a reduction in truth-telling. There's a horrific breaking of societal bonds and respect and of our ability to survive. So we have to stand together. Mohsin, let's keep in touch. If they come back to you, I want to follow up, because they must not be allowed to intimidate our citizens in the way they tried. And I have great respect, whether I agree with every word you say or not. I have great respect for a human being who has the courage that you have, the fortitude to speak your truth. That's what democracy is about. Thank you, Mohsin.
Thank you.